we've got faculty members here from several universities, all of whom offer some form of widening participation or widening access program or route into their 5-year program. And I thought it'd be interesting to get everyone together just to kind of allow people to see the breadth and the kind of the range of different options there are available in widening access to medicine. So all 4 universities represented here actually have very different widening access schemes. I thought it would be interesting if everyone could just briefly, in a couple minutes, say something about your particular scheme at your institute, and then hopefully we're going to get a lot of questions coming in from people regarding either specific application advice for each university or kind of in general widening access to medicine. So Jane, can we start with you? Could you tell us a little bit about the EMDP?
Sure. So my name is Jane, Dr. Valentine. I one of the co-directors at King's, and I run the extended medical degree program. It's a widening access route into medicine, specifically for students from non-selective state school backgrounds. It's been running around 20 years now. We have 80 new students each year, and what we do is it's not really a foundation program, so you don't do a single year and then transfer to the standard program. You're enrolled on the EMDP from the very beginning, and what we do is split the first year of medicine into 2 years, so you complete stage 1 over 2 years instead of 1. So it elongates the program a little, but we're able to offer extra academic and pastoral support in that year.
Yeah, thank you. David, could you tell us a little bit about the widening participation options?
Yeah, thanks, Connor. We're slightly different because Cardiff is, trying to cover all of Wales, and Wales is badly served in terms of doctors generally, but more particularly that we come from an area of notable deprivation. So we have been, rather like Jane, we've been very interested to make sure that we could identify students who come with what's called a contextualized flag, and these two things tend to go together. Widening access is about identifying people who have, for one reason or another, have not been successful or not necessarily got the support that they need to get to university or indeed into medical school. So that's how we operate. The contextual flag is quite difficult to discuss, but I'm happy to give some details. But it's mostly things like postcode. It's, as Jane suggested, it's about school background. It's about whether your parents went to university or went in higher education, and a variety of other things that are added into a matrix, and then we can then flag these applicants. Unlike Jane, we have no discriminatory system, if you like. Well, it's probably wrong to say it's discriminatory, but the fact is we don't add any additional time to the course. We just take these people, we soften grades for certain contextualized applicants, and when you talk about grade softening, it's a euphemism for saying we lower the grades marginally for applicants from that background. We have a scheme called the Step Up scheme, which covers pretty much all of Wales, which looks at students who have come from varying backgrounds, and we reduce the tariff that's needed for them to get an interview, so they have a guaranteed interview. So that's the way we try and manage it, because it's a big ask to cover all of Wales. It's not the same as maybe just the local schools in a particular area. Anyway, thanks.
Thank you. Should we move on to Brigit?
Hello, I'm Dr. Brigit McWade, and I'm a lecturer at Lancaster Medical School, and I'm also the lead for widening participation, so I'm part of our admissions team. Lancaster's quite a new medical school, not one of the newest, but it's only been going for 10 years now, and we have quite a substantial widening access and participation investment. So we have a foundation year in medicine surgery, and you can get on to that if you are from a widening participation background. So like David and Jane said, if you meet certain criteria to do with the area you come from, the kind of school you went to, whether you're first in family to come to university, whether you're a care leaver or a refugee or asylum seeker, there's lots of different criteria that we use to establish as to whether you are eligible for our foundation year. So you do that foundation year, and then if you pass your exams, you go on to the main 5-year degree in medicine and surgery. However, we are shifting to a 6-year degree, so medicine with a gateway year from 2021. So applications for that are beginning to open, but it will be the same thing. It's just being rebadged as a whole degree, a 6-year degree, rather than a foundation 1-year degree and 5 years. And also, so there's the options are foundation year, or we offer a contextually lowered offer, again looking at the criteria that you meet in terms of widening participation. So if you go directly onto our medicine and surgery 5-year degree, you might be eligible for slightly lowered grades at offer level. And we also run an access to medicine program, which you can collect credits towards a guaranteed interview, providing you meet the academic requirements. I think that's enough for now.
And last but not least, we've got Charlotte from Brighton and Sussex.
Hi everyone, I just want to say my name's Charlotte. I work at BSMS. I work as part of the admissions team, so a lot of my role involves going out into schools sort of pre-pandemic, giving a lot of advice and guidance to young people. And I guess our take on at BSMS is where possible in the admissions process, we like to try and level the playing field. So much like Jane, David and Brigit, you know, we look at certain backgrounds and factors and kind of take them into account where possible. At our interview stage, we try and allocate a third of all of our applications for students with contextual data. So we do ring fence a certain number of places hopefully onto our course for students from what we call sort of widening participation background. So again, there's a list of criteria that we look at, which I can post a link in the chat in a second. And again, if you meet 2 of these flags, you might be eligible for a reduced and kind of a separate or different pathway through our admissions process. We have lots of online resources, and we've launched an online work experience program, and we do various different activities and things to again try and in terms of admissions processes. But I'm sure, like all of my other colleagues in the room, I'm more than happy to take any particular questions about our admissions process or medical schools, or how we can kind of support you in this very, very strange medical school admissions cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, everyone. And I hope anyone watching who is considering applying to medicine and worrying about maybe their current predicted grades, or whether you're from a family that hasn't sent anyone to university before, I hope you can see that there's a huge range of different options. So all 4 of these medical schools are incredibly prestigious. These are all fantastic medical schools, and all 4 of them have approached this issue of widening participation very differently. So there's a huge range of things. There's a huge range of different medical schools you can apply for from a widening participation background. I'm a student on the extended medical degree program at King's. It was different when I applied. So at the point where I applied for medicine in 2013. And at that point, there were far fewer kind of contextual offers. There was no talk of contextual offers actually at that point. There was far fewer like foundation programs and that sort of thing. And the King's extended course at that point was only available for people from London. So it's changed even from when I applied only a few years ago. Yeah, fantastic. We actually haven't had any questions in yet. I don't know whether there's something particularly interesting happening on the live stage or not. But I guess I do have some questions regarding, I guess, kind of the contextual offers. That seems to be quite a hot topic for some of the recent kind of talks and things I've been to. So I know that some universities are now kind of approaching contextual offers as their kind of almost only answer to widening participation, whereas some universities kind of have a course which has traditionally lower offers for most people, but then also might have an extra year in order to provide some of that kind of extra pastoral support that people from particular backgrounds might require. And there's no right or wrong way of doing that. I don't think either way is necessarily better. But I guess, David and Charlotte, your institutes are a bit more well known for this kind of contextual offer. Could you tell us a little bit more about what a contextual offer is, and how someone will be able to know whether they are eligible for a contextual offer?
Charlotte, do you want to go first, or shall I deal with that? Oh, okay, right. Well, in answer to your question, we're now getting some questions through, but briefly, the university use a number of metrics to identify the students to us. But as I've already said, there is also a Step Up to Medicine program. There's a Step Up to University, and within that, there's a Step Up to Medicine. And so we're now looking at things like, the background of the schools, because increasingly we're aware that, if you're a good candidate in a bad school, your grades might not be that great, but relative to the rest of the cohort within that school, you could be outstandingly bright, and to have achieved the grades that were achieved in that background is important to acknowledge. But I think we're working on it. I would actually have to say, Connor, there's nothing yet that's perfect in terms of contextualization, because no matter how you try and work the formula to identify somebody, there's always something that can cause it to be either prejudicial or just not as accurate or precise, or indeed as bespoke, i.e. individualized, as we would like it to be.
Yeah.
So we have a question about what should I do about discussing challenging circumstances? I presume you mean in your UCAS personal statement. And what I would say is it's worth a brief mention, but it's also worth contacting your admissions teams of the individual institutions just to find out what their systems are. It might be that they suggest you complete a mitigating circumstances form so that it flags that you've got some circumstances there that have made things more difficult for you, and that might help us give more context to your individual situation. It's also something the referee might want to mention, because they've got a little bit more space to write than you have in your personal statement, and you don't want to spend 3/4 of your personal statement explaining some quite difficult and sensitive circumstances. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, I would. Sorry, go on. Sorry, Bridget.
No, you go ahead. I'll come back.
No, I'm just endorsing what Jane said. We have an extenuating circumstances facility, and absolutely, Jane, I think when I read some of the things, because I chair in my role as the admissions director, I chair a group of people, GP, surgeons, a variety of people that sit around, and we're often staggered by some of the things, the life events that some applicants are having to manage, and it's really important that we get to see and hear the evidence and then make an adjustment, if you like, on that basis. Yeah. And it's important that people take advantage of that.
Sure. I think most universities will have some sort of admissions process, and we have one as well. I sit on the WP admissions panel, and we review any of those difficult circumstances to make sure we're being as fair and contextual as we can to those candidates. So we must know, otherwise you're kind of doing yourself a disservice.
We have a specific form that we ask you to fill in separate to your application, so that we can assess your circumstances against our criteria. So I really, sometimes people think that maybe they're not eligible or they shouldn't bother filling it in. I would say I would presume with any medical school, we're trying as much as possible to make sure that those who are eligible get the access to the degrees or the contextually lowered offer schemes that we're offering. So rather than decide for yourself whether or not you're eligible, I'd definitely give us as much information as possible, get in contact with the admissions team. It is a gate to get through, but we're not trying to keep you out on, actively trying to keep you out. We want to work with you, make sure that we understand what's gone on for you, and then explain to you what your options are. And then just to say that we distinguish between mitigating circumstances. That you had a period of illness or a family member was ill and that's got in the way of your studies, that's a different form that we have compared to looking at your contextual data, which is, so we kind of make a distinction between those in our admissions process. So it's really good to think about, if you, as Jane and David said, use the UCAS form to mention things that are particularly important, have had an impact on you, but also speak to the admissions team to ask them how best you can, share that information with them. And then also trust that if they're asking you for information, it's for a good reason.
Yeah, definitely. I've just had someone ask me a specific question, which was, if someone meets a widening participation criteria, for example, through their postcode, but they don't meet other criteria. So, for example, if they have a parent who's only recently graduated from university, and they're now no longer the first person in their family to go to university, will that exclude them necessarily from a widening participation application? Or is it rather than having to tick every single box, is it enough to tick several boxes?
Yeah, so for us, it's meeting 2 of the criteria, and I know that the criteria will vary from medical schools to medical schools, so it's very individual. So it's best, again, to look on the pages of the medical schools that you're interested in, and you might meet the contextual data criteria of one medical school but not another. There's nothing that really there's no point that would sort of exclude you necessarily from it's more of an option. You have to meet 2 or a number of criteria rather than having something in your background that kind of excludes you from it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think just to add to what's been said, and particularly in relation to seeking advice from the medical schools, I think that one of the things that is really important to remember is that what you need to get is bespoke advice, i.e. advice individually for you. And it's very difficult in a panel like this for us to comment explicitly on circumstances. And they may, as Jane said, they may vary depending on which medical school you're considering. So I'd always encourage people to get in touch with the medical schools, and then you have it in writing, because I think it's really important, because I always say this at open days or whenever I'm talking to any prospective applicant, please email me, because at least then you're going to have it in writing, and you'll have something to point to if I've got it wrong. So it's really important that you do that.
Yeah, definitely. We've got a couple questions that kind of relate to either graduate entry or returning learners in terms of widening participation. Because I know that, for example, the extended medical degree program, one of the requirements for EMDP at King's is that you have not started a course at university before. But are there widening participation options for people who may have already completed an undergraduate course?
There are, and I think most universities, again, will look at somebody in the context of their individual background. So if you're a widening participation candidate, you will have flags, we call them flags, on your application, regardless of what course you're applying for. And that means somebody will be looking to see, okay, this person, there's something going on here. We need to give them a little bit, we need to look a bit more closely here, so that they don't get overlooked. So I think that would definitely happen on the graduate entry programs or any of our programs. In terms of returning students, I mean, it's true, yes, the MDP, you can't have started or completed a degree before, but you can be of any age. So if you've not gone to university and you decided to go off into the working world and then actually thought at the last minute when you're 50 odd, I'd like to go and study medicine, you can do that if you want to. That's down to you. As long as you haven't started or completed a degree before, you would be welcome to apply.
Yeah, from my point of view, I think it is important that you look around at the graduate entry programs. There are quite a number now, and I keep pointing people to the Medical Schools Council resources, because the entry requirements document that they have is very, very complete. But what I would say for us in Cardiff, we have a sister university just down the road, Swansea. They are only graduate entry. They only tariff effectively on GAMSAT as the academic or cognitive judgment, if you like, of the applicant. And I wouldn't want to speak for them, but I know they'd be very keen to encourage anybody who's a graduate and indeed an adult returner to consider applying to them, because in effect it is a very straightforward. I think it's a 4-year course, so it's not in any sense extended, and it is designed explicitly for graduate entrance. And there are a number over the country now, in Derby and others.
Yeah, I think it is an important kind of point to raise. I think widening participation does. I mean, I think all medical applications are generally steered toward undergraduate, but obviously it is important to also discuss people who are either returning or who maybe decided at the point of undergraduate that they weren't able to apply for medicine, but now are reconsidering. I think everyone would agree that things are now in place to encourage people to just try, and to. It seems to be the general advice in all of these circumstances is to contact specific universities, because every university is different from the others, and also every individual has different circumstances, and that would be the general advice.
We've got a question about somebody who's applying to different courses and wants to know if you should mention them by name in the statement. I think you need to try and avoid doing that where possible. I think you've got 4 choices of medical school and then 1 non-medical choice that you can put down. But you've got to try and make that personal statement as relevant as you can to all of them, because you can only put 1 in. So that would kind of be quite difficult if you were to name courses and such. Again, your referee can make mention of the kinds of things you're applying for rather than you, and that saves space and saves you having to go through that explanation. You said you're applying to 2 and they both relate to health, and so I wonder whether you're actually applying for medicine at all, or whether other programs, in which case you would have 5 different choices of any degree kind you'd like. But again, 1 personal statement needs to be submitted for all of them.
I will say that if you're applying to 4 medical courses and a 5th choice, if you contact your 5th option and explain to them that you're applying to medicine, places will quite often encourage you to separately send in a separate personal statement for whatever that 5th choice is. So, if you end up applying for your 5th choice to a specific university for, say, biomedical sciences or bioengineering or something, you often will be encouraged to separately send the admissions team there another personal statement, which will have the same constraints as a UCAS personal statement. They are aware that you're only able to put down 4 medical schools and only 1 personal statement. I would say, just from my personal experience, you are applying to all 4 medical schools because you'd be happy to attend any of those 4 medical schools, and so don't try and steer your personal statement directly towards one of them, because it will disadvantage you overall. So if you're applying to King's, Cardiff, Lancaster and BSMS, then don't specifically mention one of those by name. You want to be applying to all of them at the same time.
I think that's true, but I've also seen lots of students, especially with the London medical schools, where they've got quite a lot of choice of outreach activity that they can get involved in. There is no problem at all in you saying, get an application to my medical school, I've attended target medicine at UCL, that's fine. So don't feel that you can't say that sort of thing. Show me that you've had an interest and you've tried to work out what the realities of a career in medicine are. I don't care where you've done it at all.
Yeah, I'd echo that, Jane. I think we often have students who have maybe done some Southern Trust summer schools and things like that. And again, it's all grist to a particular mill. It shows that you've got an interest in medicine. But just going back to Connor's point, I remember I've had a few applications in my time that warble on about dentistry in a medical application. You just think, oh, that is not good.
Yeah, so we've got a bit of a break in questions now. I guess generally, is there any specific advice that should be kind of put forward to people applying from a WA or WP background that would be different to applying to a 5-year medical course from a background of I guess where the majority of medical applicants are coming from?
Yeah, I think we see with the majority of our students is the main difference is confidence and self-belief. We actually see those that come from perhaps more affluent backgrounds, or people that have got people that know medical professions in their family, or have just that kind of inbuilt confidence. And I think there needs to be more of an appreciation that actually just because you aren't like the person sitting next to you at an interview doesn't mean you're any lesser of a doctor. I think we need to appreciate that actually everyone brings different skill sets. So I think it's just because you don't have the same background or haven't had the same opportunities as someone else doesn't mean you won't make a fantastic doctor. And actually there will be skills that you can bring that maybe another person can't. So I think it's just having that, yes, I don't have what I guess the stereotypical background of what we might see at a medical school doesn't mean that you're going to be any less of a doctor. So I think if you're meeting the academic grade requirements, you've sat the relevant admissions test, just go for it. And if it doesn't happen the first time and it's something you still want to do, just carry on. We've had students apply 3 or 4 times to BSMS, and it just gets better and better. So I think that's my main thing I try and instill in all the students and young people we work with, is just, if you've got the grades, or even if you don't, you can work at it. There are other ways in. Just don't give up, I think. My main
Could I just interrupt and just say, sorry, yeah, entirely endorse Charlotte, and I would say go for it, because I think that's the point thing. I'm needed elsewhere now, so it's been great to chat to you all, and I better head on to my next appointment, so to speak.
Yeah.
Thank
you for joining us, David.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
We have a question from a person who's wanted to apply to GTEP. Oh, hello?
Hello.
Brigit, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to give some more advice about what you could do in terms of. Well, it was just building on what Jane and David were talking about before, that there's a lot of free stuff out there. So I think one of the things I've heard from the students I know in our degree scheme who've come from widening participation background is that there's a lot of organisations out there who charge for events to give you information about how to apply to medicine. You do that. There's lots and lots of free stuff available. Every medical school will have an outreach programme, and some schools, and the Medical Schools Council website has a wealth of information to get you started to thinking about all the things you need to demonstrate in your application. So really be aware that there is lots and lots of free information out there, and do research, like work out what we're looking for in terms of an applicant. And I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised to see that there is a lot there that isn't just about academic achievement, which of course is very important, but it's about the values you bring and the knowledge you bring about being part of a community or caring for people. So please don't pay for help to get into medical school. That's my big top tip.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess as a WP background, yeah, it's just apply. I had, from my 4 choices, I applied to 2 widening access courses and 2 non-widening access courses. I got interviews for King's, which was the widening access one, and then I didn't get into. I got interviews for the other 2 mainstream ones as well, and got offers. I didn't end up making the grades for those offers, and I've been at King's for 5 years now. I'm coming into my 6th year, and I'm incredibly happy to be here. And I never really wished that I was on a 5-year instead of a 6-year course. That's not really a thought that's come into my mind. I've not thought, I wish I was graduating a year earlier. I chose to integrate, so I deliberately added an extra year on to my 6th and made it 7. So don't worry about the extra year. In the end, it really doesn't matter.
Definitely.
We've got another specific question, which is, as a WP student looking to apply for GEM, could I consider applying to undergraduate, even though I know financially there will be no way to fund this?
That's quite a tough one, really. I mean, yes, you can apply for the standard 5-year courses, but if you're a graduate, you won't qualify for student finance, which means you'd have to self-fund somehow through either private loans or other means. And I've no idea, I'm afraid, on how that process works. And it's probably something you should approach the individual university admissions teams for to get some advice. Many medical schools will have bursaries and scholarship programs that you could perhaps apply for. So again, worth contacting them to see if there are any available for graduates looking to apply for standard programs.
Yeah, definitely.
The other thing is to think about finding out what medical schools offer once you're there, like Jane said, so scholarships and so on. But we also run a programme, hopefully there'll be funding for it this year, which is called Medicine Success, which helps students who either meet a widening participation criteria, plus mature students who don't necessarily access our CLOs, help with professional attire and stethoscopes and electives as well. So, you know, we are aware that it is financially challenging to study medicine because it's the longer degree, the terms are longer. You know, that is something that we really need to look into. But again, the information is there, the people are there to help, so just keep asking questions.
Yeah, definitely. At King's, again, I can only talk from my personal experience at King's, but on the EMDP program, we are providing a lot of support financially and kind of in terms of textbooks and stethoscope. They were funded by some of the sponsors of the EMDP. So the EMDP course is sponsored by the Royal College of Barbers, or the Royal Barbers.
Worshipful Company of Barbers.
Company of Barbers, there we go. Who amazingly fund textbooks and stethoscopes for all 75 EMTP students each year. So there is help available, and I'm sure each university will also have specific bursaries and financial help available, which may be more readily available to people from a WP background than others.
Yeah. They will probably have specific WP bursaries like the one we have. We have an Access to Professions bursary that effectively it gives you £3,000 for the first 3 years of study. So it's effectively your £9,000 extra tuition fees is given back to you over 3 years. So it's just to kind of take a little bit of the sting out of the extra year.
We have a question here, which is: are open university modules considered when applying for medicine?
In what context? As in, would they count against you if you attended, or
there's no context? I would assume they're talking about in terms of applying and grades. I would guess that open university modules wouldn't kind of alleviate your A-level requirements or anything like that. But if you studied an interesting open university module to do with healthcare in some context, and you learned something from that, and you wanted to talk about that in your personal statement, or you wanted to talk about it in an interview, I'm sure that would be a great way of showing an interest and kind of a dedication to studying medicine.
Absolutely, we'd echo that. I think we don't read personal statements at all in our admissions process, so anything extra that you want to tell us about needs to come through an interview, and it is all just about reflecting on experiences. In the current times, we found that a lot of young people have struggled with work experience. They've struggled, maybe they've had volunteering lined up for the summer, but it's all about, drawing out the skills and values that they've learned from the things that they've already been doing. And there are lots of great online resources. I'm just about to post a link in the chat about the MSc, who have released the guidance on gaining relevant work experience during COVID. So I think it's just, looking at everything you've done and thinking about what separate me from another applicant. And if you've gone away module, absolutely, that does demonstrate some of the core values and attributes that the MSc have recognised. So it's just about thinking about everything you've done and kind of pulling it apart and identifying those real key skills and values that are going to make you into a great doctor.
Absolutely. I would say I think people from a WP background seem to struggle more than others, or people from a non-WP background, to find work experience. Maybe you don't have family members who are doctors or family friends who are doctors. And especially over the last 6 months during COVID, I think it's really come to light for a lot of people, the kind of wealth of virtual work experience there is. And I think COVID and the kind of lockdown will really have kind of leveled the playing field a little bit this year, in terms of that might be the only work experience anyone has done. And there are some fantastic ones available. BSMS have a virtual work experience. The Royal College of GPs have an observed GP. The King's Fund have like an online MOOC about the different roles in the NHS. I think King's has just actually released one, been an actual virtual work experience written by Russell Hearn. So there is a wealth of things available. There's plenty that you could do and write about in your personal statement. And I'm sure Jane, Bridget and Charlotte will agree that people will, admission students this year are aware of the challenges that have been brought around this year.
Of course, yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, at the EMDP, we've never required clinical work experience anyway, and this year we're not really expecting that anyone will have been able to get much at all, if any. But it is all about, as Charlotte said, all of those. You might have a Saturday job or an afternoon that you spend working or volunteering at a care home. We're just as interested in that and the skills that you've developed that make you a good people person and a good communicator and all of those things. Or whether you've done something remote whilst you've been locked down at home, that's perfectly acceptable. Tell us what you've learned from it that's applicable to medicine. We don't really mind what it is, as long as you've learned something from it.
Absolutely the same at Lancaster. Yeah, it doesn't have to be clinical. We're looking for your skills, values and attributes, and how you can demonstrate that you've got them through work experience or a part-time job, whatever you've done.
I think the great thing about a lot of the online resources is that medical schools from work experience want two things. They want to see that you've got a realistic understanding of medicine, and then they want to see that you can demonstrate those skills. And the insights into medicine can come from those online resources, that they're great at providing that. And your demonstration of skills can come from things that you're doing, and you just need to be able to tie them together. So if you recognise that teamwork is important in hospitals because doctors work in a multidisciplinary team, you can then say, actually, well, on my Saturday job, when I work in a fast food restaurant, I work with other team members, and I can demonstrate that I've got those skills. So I think people and applicants, particularly this year, just need to be a bit more out of the box thinking and joining up their insights into their demonstration of skills. You can put them together. They don't have had to have come from those same experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was lucky enough to have managed to find clinical work experience, but I think there's plenty of people on my course. A lot of my peers didn't, and they just drew on their life experience and spoke about that. We had a question specifically about what advice you might give to a current year 11 or year 12 student, and what they should be doing now. So maybe people who aren't applying this cycle, who aren't going to be applying in October, what can people be doing between now and this time next year to try and kind of increase those chances of getting into medical school?
I think the links that Charlotte and I and Brigit have put up so far in the chat would be good starting places. Look at what's available online that you can access remotely whilst things are a bit difficult to get out and about for. Start planning ahead. You've got to sit the UCAT next year, but there's no harm in starting practicing for it now. It's unlike what they say on the website, you can learn it. And so you should practice and practice and practice, and you will get better. It's like an IQ test. So the more you do, the higher your IQ will be. And that's not because you've got any more clever, it's just because you've got used to the style of questioning and the system that's in place. So start practicing now. I guess, think about those key skills that you might want to develop. Have a look at the GMC's Good Medical Practice Guide and look at what we're asking of our doctors, and start thinking about how you can demonstrate those skills as well. And then sign up for some outreach activities, even if they're remote. So there's a whole host of universities, us, but every single one will have outreach going on, and most of it will be remote at the moment anyway. So it doesn't matter where in the country you are, just sign up to everything and hop along.
Yeah, do your research. Look at, because whilst a medical degree is the same everywhere, the way that it's delivered is different. So you might want to think about how you learn the best, and then look at the different ways a medical school delivers its curriculum. So for example, at Lancaster, we offer a problem-based learning curriculum, and you need to decide whether that's the kind of thing you would like, or you would prefer a more traditional way of going to lectures, because that limits your options quite a lot. And then I'm not sure what KCL and VSMS do in terms of curriculum. I can see Charlotte's busily posting lots of links in the chat, but
yeah,
there are different ways. So.
the machine, yes. Yeah, I mean, they're all very, very different in terms of not only their requirements, but the course once you're there. Even things as simple as what the size of the university is like and the size of the cohort. Now, some people want to be somewhere really, really small where they can feel very part of something very little. Others like to be anonymous in a big cohort, and that's going to affect who you choose to apply to as well. And I think really you've got to just think very honestly about how you learn and the kind of environment you're going to be suited to best, and apply to those, because it's a waste of time otherwise applying to ones that you really aren't going to be happy at.
I think my kind of big piece of advice, especially for year 11s thinking about going into college or sixth form, think about what A levels you're choosing. Have a look at what medical schools are looking for. You know, majority of medical schools, you know, if you're looking at taking A levels, if you're taking biology and chemistry, you are going to be, you know, safe with the majority of medical schools. If you're just taking biology or just taking chemistry, there are still medical schools that will accept you with one of the sciences, but you know, you don't want to put all your eggs necessarily in one basket. So just really carefully consider what A levels you are choosing. You know, you don't want to narrow down your choices before you've had a chance to do as much research as possible. So just consider what you're taking. You don't want to like cut your nose off to spite your face in that sense. And just, yeah, have a look, do your research, use the Medical Schools Council key skills and values, and start identifying where you've already got, you can demonstrate that you're meeting those key skills, and just make a note of everything you do, because by the time you come around to write your personal statement, you might forget what you did last year. So just make a note of it. Whenever you do something new, or you're participating in something, take 5 minutes, you know, if you're walking or on the bus or wherever you are, just think about what you've learned from that experience, because it will be a lot easier when you're preparing for interview or writing a personal statement. You already have things to write about. Yeah,
absolutely. I would also echo in terms of the A levels is I hope it's less of an issue now, but particularly when I was choosing my A levels, I was certainly under the impression that more was better. I ended up taking 5 A levels because I thought a chance, which was just the entirely wrong thing to have done. Obviously, universities only care about 3 of them, so do 3 and do well in those 3.
3 well. Yeah.
Yeah, our advice would be, again, this does depend on university to university. We ask for biology, chemistry, and a 3rd subject. We really don't care what that 3rd subject is. I know there's lots of myths around there about having to study biology, chemistry, and math. That is the go-to golden 3 that gets advised by teachers everywhere. We would much rather you do a subject that you know you're going to enjoy and do well at. We just want that grade in that 3rd subject. So honestly, choose a subject that you are passionate about, that you're interested in, and yeah, if you're not keen on maths, don't force yourself to sit an A level, because for the majority of medical schools, it won't make a bearing on your application.
Yeah, and if you're worried about your math skills in medicine, the maths you have to do for A-level chemistry is adequate for medicine on the whole.
I believe you can do biology, chemistry, or psychology for us. So psychology, I think, is a new addition for this year. But again, check our website. And check it. Sorry, carry on.
No, carry on.
I was just saying, it quite often is just check the website, because it's different for every school, so there's no point us going through which ones.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good point. I think A levels are often kind of missed off in these conversations. I think these conversations are often aimed at people in year 12 who maybe are about to apply, particularly this time of year. But it's important to, I think I tend to forget that there are also year 11s who need to be preparing and can be doing things for the next year, and choosing their A levels is definitely a big part of that. Thank you, Charlotte. So we're actually coming up. We've got about a minute left before we're going to be kicked off to make room for whoever's next up on this hub. Are there any kind of closing remarks that anyone would like to make?
Best of luck, everybody.
Yeah, definitely. That's good. Yeah, good luck.
Definitely.
Yeah, good luck. And if you're passionate about it, stick at it. You know, if it doesn't happen this time, go again next year.
Yeah, don't feel like you have to take your fifth choice. If you apply for 5 universities and you don't get any of your 4 medical schools, don't feel like you have to do your fifth choice. It can often be easier to get into undergraduate medicine and postgraduate medicine. And so if taking a year off is something that you feel like you're able to do, and you feel like you can take a gap year, whether that means working or it means volunteering or it means traveling, or you feel able to do, don't be afraid to necessarily, and be aware that you can reapply, and most people have to reapply for medicine.
Yeah, I think that's really important, especially for our course, because if you've started or completed a degree before, you make yourself ineligible to apply again for the MDP. So don't be, if you really want to do medicine and are wanting to do it undergraduate, don't take that fifth option. Stick at it another year.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, Brigit.
No, it's fine. Everybody said everything. I just want to reiterate, don't pay for any of the information. It's all there for free. Okay. And also BMAT and UCAT, I think, have bursaries to help with the cost of those, which they do cost, and they're one of the things you do have to pay for. But they do look at the options for reduced price or covering the cost. So explore their websites thoroughly, because all the help you need is there as well.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining me, and for coming in and contributing so much to this talk.